Hello everyone, Simon Jacobson here for another episode of Meaningful Live. We'll be speaking about, in honor of Mother's Day, the original influencer. Why moms shape the world. So, we are here and talk about influencers. This program is dedicated by Laser Fagan in honor of Rachel Bas Avraham. So there's much talk about influencers, people who are influencing others. The original and ultimate influencer is, at the end of the day, your mother. Your father as well, but mother even more so. You know, there was a time when child psychologists and psychology in general did not really appreciate the early stages of our formative years, which meant that children were seen. I remember reading a book from 1948, I think, on child psychology. Children were seen as deaf, dumb, and blind. Nothing around them affected them until they became semi-intelligent or started maturing. Everything washed over them. Nothing impacted them. Today, the exact opposite is true. Basic psychology states that every person, from the youngest of age, even during pregnancy, is even more impressionable than later years. Now, a good analogy for this would be like a seed. If you make one little scratch in a seed, it's not going to impact in a small way. As the seed becomes a tree one day, that little scratch can become a big gash, can become a big wound. So the earlier in our development, the more we are shaped by it. So then it goes without saying, obviously, that the first influence in your life is going to be your mother, the one that carried you for 9 months. And then when you're born, the one that should have been the nurturer. I say should have been because unfortunately it's not always the case, and we'll talk about that. Because those are the forces that shape our lives. There's a lot of talk lately about attachment, healthy attachment versus unhealthy attachments, connections. A human being, just as we need oxygen, we need attachment. And indeed, 9 months in the mother's womb, you're completely attached by the umbilical cord, which feeds you, which brings you life, brings you oxygen, brings you everything. And even upon birth, when the umbilical cord is cut, how much a child is dependent. Today there are studies that show that children that are, God forbid, separated from their mothers upon birth, they will suffer for it. They will continuously feel a void. Children that have been adopted. That doesn't mean they can't figure ways to compensate, but it's not a simple matter. Because it's not optional. We need that touch. We need that connection. And even if it's not in such an extreme way, if anything has been severed, the sense of abandonment, absenteeism, and definitely more overt forms of abuse that traumatize a child, repeated especially, will have profound impact in how we trust, how we love, how we build our own relationships. You can even attribute most of the fears and insecurities that we are challenged with are very much part of the experience of what happens in our childhood years. So it's not even a question, hands down. The biggest and greatest influencer in your life is your mother. A father is a close second, because a healthy child needs to have 2 healthy parents. But the mother even more so, because she carries the child. She carries you. And in some ways, the nurturing of a mother, especially in the early years, seems to be even more vital than a father. And again, I'm not minimizing. And frankly, from my perspective and our tradition, every day should be Mother's Day. And for that matter, every day should be Father's Day. Because it's not just once a year that we honor. These are the individuals that help shape who we are. Now, in the healthiest context, what they provide you is mostly invisible. If someone asks you, what does health feel like? Your answer should be, it feels like nothing. A healthy person shouldn't feel anything. If you feel something, it's already a bad sign. If it's a dull feeling, a sharp feeling, any type of feeling. What does it feel like to breathe? If you're feeling your breath and your heart beating, it means something is off. Maybe you were running, some exertion. But health is seamless and therefore senseless. Senseless, I mean without sense. Shouldn't feel like anything. It should be so smooth and seamless you wouldn't even know that it's there. So when you have healthy nurturing in your life, the expression will be that your life will be just a healthier life. It's when you're lacking something, that's when you start struggling for it. And that's when you feel it. Now, none of us have perfect parents, and none of us have perfect childhoods. But there are measures and levels. So what we have to look at to really honestly appraise and assess and what we're made of is to look at what are our attachments like. You want to get a good sense, a good x-ray of your own life. What were your attachments like? If you had healthy attachments, and I'm beginning from pregnancy, where, thank God, in this interesting way, even if a mother is not a healthy person, unless she really abuses herself through drugs or alcohol or other ways, a child is mostly protected when it's submerged in the embryonic fluids of the fetus within the womb. But once the child is born, the effects of the parents have a tremendous impact. So if the attachments are healthy, and there's functionality, and that means validation, support, a child feeling the consistent love of a parent, a child feeling that there's someone to rely on, they know they come home, and there isn't any second guessing, and there isn't that critique or wondering, will my parent be there for me? If all that is working more or less properly, what you have is someone who has the spiritual and psychological, emotional oxygen that defines how your life will be led as you go through your life. So when you then grow up and start looking for your own relationship, you will trust more. You will give people the benefit of the doubt because you feel secure. You feel safe. If you didn't have that security and safety, either due to, we'll start on the more subtle level, due to being overcritical parents, who are always judging, always criticizing, not validating, or absentee parents and not there for you, or divorced parents, and you don't know where you're going to be sleeping the next night, or parents who've been traveling all over the world in a nomadic fashion, have created for the child that the child needs to know, I know where I'm going, what my schedule is like. These are the things that create, that consistency creates patterns that the child can rely on. I know where I'm going, but if there's doubts in that area, a child doesn't have the tools to handle it. You know, people wonder, why doesn't a child leave a home that's dysfunctional? Just leave, go run somewhere. There's a big world out there. For children, there is no world outside the door of their home. For them, practically speaking, walking out the home is like walking off the earth. And that also explains another thing, why children blame themselves when their parents get divorced or their parents in some way are abusive. Because for a child, it's unacceptable. The person who's supposed to be giving me my love, my nurturing, they have to be perfect. I know it's funny, but sometimes as parents, you start saying to yourself, when will my children see through the facade that I'm not perfect, that I'm not God? But children need to believe that, and they want to believe that. So if something happens, they have to blame themselves. Something's wrong with me. I'm not being loved enough, so I did something wrong. Or I'm flawed, or I'm damaged goods. What does that all do? That undermines the confidence, the self-esteem that a child deserves. And it turns into an adult with a lot of armor and defenses and all kinds of mechanisms. And the smarter you are, the more you cover your tracks, you create a whole new identity. And you don't say, no, of course I'm open. Of course I'm happy to be vulnerable. No. You may be an adult, but a terrified little child that's still looking for validation, still looking for love. And then we start looking for love in the wrong places, and we start looking for attachments in the wrong places, which is what we call attachment disorder. It's a lack of seamlessness. In Hebrew, the word for love, ava, is the same gematria, the same numerical equivalent as unity, as seamlessness, as echad. Because attachments create that connection. You feel your mother embraces you. We're connected. 9 months in the womb, we're connected, we're attached. So attachment and love. When you don't have that, what happens is you start getting attached to things, looking for relief, looking for some solace, some comfort, and very often in the wrong places, very often in dangerous places, in destructive places, destructive relationships, destructive addictions. Addiction is simply an attachment disorder. It's an attachment, but to the wrong thing. So tell me, is that not the ultimate influencer in your life, the one that shapes your very being? But keep in mind that even if it's a bad case, a worst case scenario, once you know that's the issue, then you have to start reviewing, soul searching, introspectively, to figure out what are your attachments and where have they been severed, where have they been compromised, and what you can do to find healthy attachments. So it's not all over. I remember, I never forget, and I've shared this, but I want to share it now. I remember one of the early pioneers in the 70s of the inner child psychological perspectives. John Bradshaw was his name. And he was I think he was a former pastor, not even sure. I think his father, but he grew up, his father was an alcoholic. And the shame, the way he talks about the shame, I couldn't have other friends come home because my father could be in a stupor. It was unpredictable. One day he would come home and very pleasant and loving, the other day completely a lunatic. All the shame that creates. Your father, you want to be a hero, and then you see him there lying in vomit. Just all the psychological, trauma that the child experiences. And then you, of course, try to cover it up. So you're living a lie. You can't tell people. They say, why can't I come play over by your house? Why do you have to always come to my house? You have to come up with some lie. So you start lying about things. Anyway, he goes on and on about his own life experiences, and then obviously went into the world of healing, starting with healing himself. But I remember someone had sent me, I'm not even sure how it got to me, it was a the age of VHS, if you remember those things you put into a machine. I think it was a PBS show, if I recall correctly, and he did a workshop that I've never forgotten. He had like maybe 50, 60 people in the room, men and women. And it was on screen, obviously. I watched it on screen. And he had this voice, a very soothing voice. But what struck me as soon as I turned it on was this sound. There was a certain background sound that I could not quite place, but it was so recognizable. And after a few seconds, I began to realize what it was. It was an amplified heartbeat. Boom, 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 boom. So the heartbeat has a sound, but when you amplify it, it's like a very interesting sound. And behind the scene, and the sound, besides the thump of the contraction and expansion, there's also that almost like a rushing, almost like quiet waves. They're not silent, but they're a little lower volume, but that's like the background. So you hear a heart. And frankly, it's a very, very soothing sound. I remember it was playing before he began to speak. And everyone was sitting there. In the background, you hear this heartbeat, the heartbeat. Consistent. Boom, 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 boom. And with the background a little lower than that, like it sounded like water, like a wave washing up on a beach. And then John began to speak. And he started saying, this is the sound of your mother's heartbeat. You are a fetus in her womb, speaking very slowly and very deliberately. I don't even know if I can recreate it. And all the while, you hear the heartbeat in the background, your mother's heartbeat. The fetus you're developing, that's all you hear 24/7. That heartbeat. Very calming, very reassuring, very nurturing. And especially the water side, like feeling like you're submerged in water, completely covered, completely protected, completely nurtured. And he says, and your mother is speaking to you. And he begins to share what she's saying. She's saying, I waited for you all my life. I cannot wait to meet you, my dear child. You're my ultimate love. You're a part of me, and I'm part of you. I prepared for you a special room and a new crib and white linen, clean white, fresh new linen. Cuddling you, pajamas, under a blanket. I will always be there for you. I will always protect you. I will always nurture you. Should you need anything, never hesitate. I will always be there for you. And all the while, you have the heartbeat in the background, which is just affirming and reaffirming the message. And he continues to speak in this tone, that spirit of waiting for you all my life. The unconditional love. And that's all the child hears. After a little while, people in the room start to cry. And so did I, frankly. It was very emotional. It resonated. It wasn't just a nice... So initially, like all of us, skeptical, I was somewhat, it's staged, fabricated, manipulative. But then no, it really began to resonate. I don't remember all the lines, but it was in that same tone of that mother, that unconditional love. And I cannot wait to see you. With that enthusiasm. That's what the child's hearing, 9 months in a row, with a heartbeat, consistent. So it's not just words. It's like living it. The child is obviously completely protected in the womb. And then at some point, John Bradshaw stopped speaking. The heartbeat continued. Everybody was sitting there literally in tears, extremely emotional. And he waited a minute for the moment to settle in. And then I remember all of us like a little startled. He said, so what just happened? Why are we all so emotional? And the answer is obvious. Because this is either resonates because it's something that that you experienced, even though you don't remember it, or you should have experienced. And you see how much you're lacking, how much you're missing in your life, because this was not given to you. As I said, it left such an indelible impression on me, because I realized this is the early stages of our lives, exactly what happens. And if a mother does not give that to you, it's not just you're missed a meal or a compliment. It's like the very forces that shape who you are. It's not just physical food that we need. We need the spiritual food. We need the psychological reinforcement. We need this confidence, this reassurance. And again, only when you don't have it do you feel the lack. When you have it, you just have a natural confidence, like a fish in water. A fish doesn't need to be told you can swim. It just swims. But if it's been deprived, then it's a whole other story. This is what a mother is, a true mother. But you'll say, okay, well, what happens if I did not have a mother that told me that? Or a mother that said the exact opposite. I hate you. You're unwanted. You're making my life miserable. You're tearing apart my spouse. And I don't even want to go on the worst things the terrible things that parents can say to children. Then what? Is it all lost? No. Because at the end of the day, your mother did not give you your soul. She nurtures your soul. Think of it like a gardener that protects the garden. Nurtures it, waters it, weeds it. But even if the gardener was not there, you still have your soul. It's just your soul needs work. It needs a nurture. You have to learn to nurture yourself. You have to find people that can nurture you. But you need to be aware. Awareness is the key. Because the problem is when you start looking for alternatives and you don't realize that you're compensating for this lack, you're going to find all the wrong answers. So you need to reconnect with yourself and realize, I need this. I need someone to tell this to me. But here's the catch. At some point, as we turn into adults, you cannot just suddenly rely on someone that else is going to fill your void. That's what many of us do. I'm looking for my mother. That was never there. For my father, that was never there. No one could ever replace them. So you need to nurture yourself. And then there's a certain amount you can depend on another. Unfortunately, we start over-depending on people because we want to compensate. We become desperate. Think of a drowning victim. What happens when a top-notch lifeguard comes to save a drowning victim? They'll pull the lifeguard down. That's why they have to be trained to know how to hold a person and make sure. Because when you're desperate and you're gasping for air, what you do is you grab even the one that's coming to save you suddenly becomes a liability. You can drag them down together with you. That's what happens because we're really desperate for this love. We may not act desperate. We may not cover our tracks. We may not hide it. But that's what's happening. So that's why it's important to go back and say, okay, what did I have in my life? And if it's not my natural mother, what friends do I have? Others, mentors, teachers. What do I need to find? Very often you look at your Rolodex, you look at your contact list, and it's a bunch of people that either are recreating what your mother did, more abuse, or definitely not nurturing. We sometimes write scripts that are very similar to the script that was given to us. Maybe you have to rewrite your script. Maybe you need to find new friends. You need people who encourage you, that give you that support, that give you that unconditional love. Can we recreate the entire past? We can't change the past, but we can identify. We can identify the weaker links, the things that we did not get, and learn ways to compensate, learn ways to replace, learn ways to nurture yourself, to take care of yourself. Make sure that you love yourself in a good way, not in an arrogant way, in a humble way, that you have much to be loved for. Birth is God saying you matter. A line I use very often for my book, Toward a Meaningful Life, that the very existence is the ultimate nurture, is that the God that created you. That's where you go to ultimately, because that nobody can take from you. Obviously, it's a tremendous assistance when you have a mother and a father that support that and affirm that. But regardless, saying in the morning, the Moda'ani prayer or chant, meditation I often share, thank you for returning my soul to me. Your soul is your nurturer. You have to reconnect with it. Now again, if you have parents that validated that and affirm that, excellent. But even if not, all is not lost. You can rebuild. But you need to be honest, brutally honest, because you don't want to create an illusion and just protect yourself or, in a sense, minimize your wounds because you don't want to reopen them and think you're going to find alternative ways. You have to go back there as much as necessary. I'm not saying entirely, and rebuild the mother within you. To mother yourself, to mother your own inner child, and let your inner child emerge feeling safe, because that's what it's waiting for. Very often that inner child hides because it's not been protected, so it doesn't want to be hurt. So it hides in a closet, it hides under a table, it hides within you, but it doesn't go away. It will make you miserable. And the new adult that has taken over is like so-called maybe going through all the motions and you're cool and everything seems great and you're in control, but you really have that little child still crying, waiting for someone to come home, waiting for someone to hold it, to cuddle it, to comfort it. And you're going to have to come to terms, the day of reckoning. What you want to do is let the new adult that has developed, the not real you, that outer personality, the armor, the defenses, the protection, what you want to do is revisit and say to your little child, you're safe. I will protect you. I will watch over you. You become your own mother, basically, and your own father. Now again, I hope that nobody has to rely on that, and we had parents that provided what they needed to provide, but I'm familiar with the reality that it's not always the case. So we have to look at ourselves, figure out where we are. I don't think it's usually not the extremes that I defined here. I just gave two extremes, somewhere in between, where we do have a mother, maybe not complete, maybe partial, maybe some of us have lost a mother at a young age. But you have to look at your life assess it. Always find someone objective that can help you, that you can trust, because trust is obviously critical. And remember, trust is built not on perfection, but on accountability. So, some thoughts about mothers and influencers and that which has shaped us in our lives, and for one way or another, but also with the constant hope and confidence that you have what it takes inside you. Your child deserves to be loved and will be loved, but you need to love it, and you need to nurture it, and you need to find people that support that. And you can rebuild, and some ways sometimes become even stronger in the broken places. So thank you for that, for listening, that is. And this has been Simon Jacobson. MeaningfulLife.com is our website. Please subscribe to these offerings, to other offerings. If you've enjoyed this, felt this is meaningful, please share with others. Love to hear your thoughts, feedbacks, and comments, as always. And be blessed, be nurtured, be loved, love yourself. And I look forward to see you again soon. And please know that we at the Meaningful Life Center are here for you in every possible way. We have now new resources and tools. We've been using AI, simonjacobson.ai, where you can have a virtual conversation with me as well as or a chat. And I hope you take advantage of that. And again, love to hear from you. Be well and be blessed. Thank you.